I don't know what happens. We just get so excited up in here. We're live. 7:34. How's everybody doing? And close. Stay. How's everybody doing? Tonight we are going to talk about two different small block Chevy intake manifolds. One of them, the ACCEL Super Ram, for back in the TunePort days. John Langenfelter, I think designed this, and he did an excellent job. And John was one of the greatest guys in this industry that I ever met. I could say nothing but good things about him. And that intake manifold, I remember longing after that back when I was writing for All Chevy magazine when I kind of first started on staff at one of the magazines. And I ended up getting to build a 406 small block Chevy stroker, and then we put a Vortec on it, which was awesome because, and airflow research heads on it. So, you put all the good stuff on it. But that Super Ram, I even did some painting of the lid and polishing and stuff. So it looked kind of awesome. We did some kind of fancy stuff, and it worked out good. That was a good manifold. It's a little bit of a chore, like most of the TunePort stuff, especially the factory-based stuff with any kind of bolt-on runners. Kind of a pain to bolt together, but still, once you got it all together and it was tight and everything, as long as you didn't drop anything in there, it was, they were cool. And all of the TunePort stuff, all the long runner TunePort stuff, obviously making a lot of torque. Now the ACCEL Super Ram shortened that up a bit and then had a bunch more plenum volume. I think it just really, probably the plenum volume just helped it look awesome, and it did. We all, whenever you pop the hood of any kind of TunePort thing, you saw that, you're like, oh yeah, that's what TunePort performance should look like. Although I have to say, we've said it over and over again, the TunePort manifold, probably Chevy's best looking intake manifold, maybe besides the Rochester, the 327 Rochester fuel injection. I like it better than the 283 version, but that was also cool looking. But I still kind of have to give the nod to the TunePort stuff. It was very elaborate, very cool looking. I do like the oval air cleaner on the Crossfire stuff as well, which I think was kind of cool looking. But in the TunePort stuff, this Stealth or the Super Ram, very, very cool. So the question becomes then, and this will be our poll for tonight. Would you choose an ACCEL Super Ram over a HOLLEY Stealth Ram for your EFI small block build? And we'll start our poll. So we've talked about the Super Ram. Now we got to talk about the Stealth Ram. And the Stealth Ram, basically, you can kind of think about it, and I tested it in the big TunePort shootout. You can kind of think about it as a TunePort setup. Really only in that it has the TunePort style dual kind of throttle body, or a big single oval if you wanted to do that. We ran dual throttle body openings, the kind of the more traditional ones, like the stock one, just bigger versions, 52 and 58 millimeter versions. We ran those on the Stealth Ram. And the Stealth Ram basically is, unlike the Super Ram, the Super Ram is its own plenum, and then shorter versions of the runner that bolt to a factory style TunePort lower. Now the ACCEL Super Ram lower has bigger runners in it, so it flows better than the stock stuff does. The Stealth Ram, however, is not like that. The Stealth Ram is basically a tunnel ram, lower section, obviously with provisions for injectors and the EFI setup, and then has a big box basically bolted on top of it. Not unlike the ACCEL Super Ram is kind of like that, just a different shape. But a box on it, rectangular box, opening, two throttle hole openings for you to mount, the kind of traditional TunePort dual blade throttle body setup. Again, a variety of different sizes that you could put on there, anywhere from the stock up to, I think the biggest one that we would put on there was like a 58 millimeter. I think those were like the 1,000 CFM ones. And, they were more than big, like 1,000 CFM dual throttle body, probably more than big enough for what 99% of the tune port stuff that people were building. Because if you're building a tune port thing, you weren't making a lot of horsepower, because a lot of those combinations, except with the possible exception of the mini RAM, the TPIS one, the very short runner one, you weren't going to build a lot of power with them because it just didn't allow you to run a lot of RPM. But the stealth RAM, tunnel RAM, and if you look at it, it's an awful lot like a Hawaiian tunnel RAM with a box on it, throttle body, injectors, and that one did very well. That one, unlike the other tune port stuff that were kind of designed to make, a factory tune port's going to make peak power at, 45 to 4,800. And so this allowed, at least, especially with stuff that had cams and things and ported heads, like we had the airflow research stuff in there, it allowed it to make peak power much higher. So we could shift stuff up toward 6,000 or even beyond that with some of the really short runner stuff. But that begs the question, okay, which one of these do you like more? And this is like the questions that we have for a lot of things, like picking an intake manifold for your LS. Do you pick the truck manifold or the Trailblazer SS that works well, but they're ugly? Or do you pick the pretty one? Do you pick the prom queen polished, sniper style manifold? Doesn't work as well, but it sure looks good. Which one of those do you pick? I think that this is some of that same thing. Personally, for me, I like the way that the Super RAM looks better. But because this is a dyno program, we can talk about what kind of power curves they make. You guys won't be able to see this, but I can explain it in detail. Basically, if you look at the power curves of these things, we ran it on a 383, a pretty big cammed one, and it made peak power with the stealth RAM out at 5,900 RPM. And it made more power than the Super RAM did. So it made as much as, let's see, like here at 6,000 or 6,100, we had 465 versus 491. So what's that? 25 horsepower or something. 25 horsepower better. They crossed over, oddly enough, at 52.52, right at where horsepower and torque crossed over, which is, if we see that a lot. Below that, the longer runner and different design ACCEL Super RAM made more power. In terms of peak torque, we're looking at 506 for the Super RAM and like 490 for the stealth RAM. So the Super RAM made more peak torque and made more torque, from, we started this at like 2,500 and then ran it, and it made more power to 52.52. The biggest difference was at 3,900, where the stealth RAM made 472 and the Super RAM made 503. So 30 foot-pounds at 3,900 in favor of the Super RAM, but, a pretty fair bit out at the top of the RPM range in terms of horsepower. So for most of the curve, ACCEL Super RAM, better deal. And honestly, I think if you did a roll on in one gear, probably, I don't think that the stealth RAM would ever catch up and offset the big gains that you had down low. And I think you'd have more fun driving that, but you guys let me know, which one do you pick? Do you pick the one that makes more peak horsepower, the one that makes more peak torque or average torque? Which of those things do you choose? And this is always the way, like I was saying, do you pick the one that's more powerful, let's say, necessarily? Do you pick the one that looks better? Do you pick the one that makes more torque down low, or from 5,000 or whatever down low? Or do you pick the one that makes more power on top? Again, all of that's, there's not a clear-cut answer for any of that stuff, because we're all different. We all like different things. Some people want to rev the thing out, put even more camshaft in it. We had airflow research heads that think could certainly make a lot more power. So we had airflow research heads. We had that stealth RAM. Honestly, I think, how much power were we making on this thing? We're making near 500 horsepower. So I think probably we'd be getting to the point where I start thinking about, bigger throttle bodies, maybe an oval throttle body or something like that. But that setup worked pretty well. The other thing that the box had on the stealth RAM is it was a box, but it also had a radius entry on the way that they cast this thing. It had a radius entry going into the runners, which is a good idea to help with flow. You could be really cool and put little, flared entry trumpets in there, inside there, which would be cool. And you could just drill holes and mount them, put just tap it and put flanges on your bell mouse and make them work, man. That'd be cool in there. That would be awesome. So let me know which one of those you guys would pick. And that's the thing. There's always a trade-off. We always got to pick something over something else. Knowledge, what's going on? Jet Black, Alan, Jay, 2025, the year of the Richard. Yep. Good times, good times. Lingenfelter 420 Super Ram intake was up on Facebook Marketplace last week. Cool. Sometimes you see them. They're not cheap a lot of times. Charlie Brown, what's going on? Maverick. Happy New Year's. TPI, a Tesla roaster rib cage copy with less ribs. For intakes, if it ain't broke, don't fix it unless it's a Ford. Wow, guy's throwing shade. Bobby, what's going on? I have a Stealth Ram now. Nice. It's good. Had the mini Ram with a stick. It was nasty from 4,500 to 7,000. Never had the Super Ram, but always heard it was about the best on the 33406 with the blower. Well, let's see. I can tell you right now, how does the mini Ram compare? Because we have that. Mini Ram. So the mini Ram trades even more. It made more peak power, made over 500. So instead of making 495 like the Stealth Ram, it made 502. Yeah, 502. So 6 or 7 horsepower. And it was better than the Stealth Ram from 5,600 on up, and better than the Super Ram from 5,400 on up. So it'd be an interesting, mini, and it lost torque quite a bit. I mean, compared to the Super Ram, for instance, what are we down here? I bet that's got to be 50. 454 versus 503. Yeah, so that's 49 foot-pounds for the Super Ram is better than the mini Ram in the 4,000 RPM range. And that's to be expected. One of them makes more power on the top, one of them makes more power down low and in the middle through lots of a curve, 52 or 5,300. That's a lot of it for only running to 6,500. What about the new HOLLEY high ram for the small block Chevy with LS throttle body? Test it. I do need to test that. I do want to run one of those. How high can the L99 rev? Are you talking about the 4.3 liter one? I'm kind of on time today. There you go, Zoo Truck. To the moon. Yeah. Yeah, here's what I'll tell you, that it's the valve train. it's not the stroke. Why do you do it? It's a 52-52 conspiracy. That's right. Because those are the coordinates of the moon landing. If you check that out, that's actually true. I hope that starts to be a thing. That would be awesome. Torque, RPM, gets horsepower. It's just math. That's right. I blame James Watt. What does he know about horses? Been going to the Brian Redmond vintage races at Road America for almost a decade. Nice. I'm going for fuel injection, small block Chevy, converted mechanical injection intake, like what's on forming the 5,000 car. Yeah, those are cool, definitely. I also had a TPI-BASED big mouth runner and a lower intake manifold. We also tested that in this test. Portaplenum, 58 millimeter throttle body, 210 at 50. Yeah, that should be really good. That should be really good and torquey. I have the Aces Jackpot standalone ECU and cannot find anyone who tunes them. I've not heard much good, but it's what came with the car, and we know who can remote tune these. Anybody have any idea for them? I've never looked at one of those. I don't know what their system looks like. Victoria Principal. That's going back. Horsepower gets in victory lane. Torque gets you in Victoria sheets. Wow. South Ramicas are available. I'm running a Vortec HSR LT4 hot cam combo. It's a nice little driver. That would be good. Currently building a turbo 408 stroker LQ4. Looking for my rotating assembly. Have you heard anything or have any experience with CNC Motorsports or Go Texas Speed? I think, honestly, I don't know how much power you're trying to make, but any of the forged stuff, given what we do with NA stuff, all the forged stuff is going to be good. I don't see too many people getting to the limit of forged internals and not having a problem somewhere else. And so those guys are the Summit Pro LS stuff, K1, Carrillo, Bullet, all of those are good things. Think of stroking my bone stock Vortec 350 to 376, getting a cam soon and bigger injectors. Did you say a while back you never run your engines on the dyno in closed loop? I don't normally do that. Some of the guys like Brule like to do that when he didn't run fuel injection that often, but when he did, he liked to run it in closed loop, particularly at part throttle, so that it would kind of map itself. I don't do that. I have so many files that I start with that I just put a file in there that will get me really close. And then I don't care about mapping the rest of it. All I care about is mapping the areas that I'm using, because I'm not trying to tune something. A lot of people think that you need to tune this thing and do the whole thing. And that the tune's got to be perfect. It doesn't. For not what I'm doing. For what I'm doing, the tune needs the idle. It needs to transition from idle to where we're going to wide open throttle. If we're starting at 2,000 RPM, it needs to go up to the 100 kPa if it's a naturally aspirated motor, and then it needs to go straight across. That's all it has to do. Now I can interpolate everything else, so as I'm rolling in, it doesn't do anything weird. And I do that for the roll in and watch where it goes into, and then I duplicate the roll in every time so that we're not doing a TPS transition or anything like that. And that's all that I have to do. I don't care what it does under closed loop. And I determine what the changes are. I don't want it making a run and adjusting while I'm running. I don't want it making any changes at all. I only want it to be the way that it is. And then if I want to make it 12.9 instead of 12.8, I'll do that. And then we'll see if there's any change. I don't want it adjusting while that's happening. I haven't seen an ACCEL Super RAM in a long time. Have you ever dynoed the Stealth RAM with and without porting? I've seen weird flow numbers on the Stealth RAM, especially when they're connected to heads and the plenum. I don't know what kind of changes that you're talking about, but I don't ever remember porting one of them. We have run them on a ported lower manifold, but I don't think that the runners were ported though. Is this a new HOLLEY style Edelbrock? The Edelbrock carburetors, the VRS carburetors, are very, very good. Wasn't the Stealth RAM a nightmare to bolt together? It was it was challenging. It was challenging. I remember it like it was yesterday. I've seen HSR flow 230 through heads that can flow much better. I also have seen a stock one flow 270 with just the runners, plenum, and throttle body. True Shock, I don't know what you mean by what are my thoughts. How much different is the mini RAM than the LT1 intake manifold? Which one's flows better? I've never seen any flow tests of those two. And I've never run an LT. I don't know that I've seen a mini RAM that's LT1 specific. And I've never run an LT1 manifold on a conventional small block. You want to run your commanded airfield without a deviation? I don't want it to do that. I don't want it to change while I'm making a pull. I don't want it to make an adjustment while I'm making a pull. Turbo 400 is less money. Torque converters are affordable if you're running low gears, not so highway friendly. Have you ever tested the trumpets on the Stealth Ram? I know Visor talked about using spacers with trumpets. I don't think I've ever put anything inside there on a Stealth Ram, but we know what it does because a radius entry is better. It has a little bit of a radius entry, but if you change the runner length, which is what a stack is going to do, then you'll definitely change the power output. Super Ram definitely fits under a low hood. Yeah, I don't know what the height is. Makes a lot of sense now. Learn something every time. Have you ever seen the Super Ram for a big block Chevy? Lingenfelter made a few of them. I did, and they actually had runners inside there. A 480 weighs 250 pounds with a stock inverter, turbo 400, no torque converter weighs 135 pounds. Any chance we'll ever see an LS7 Big Bang? No, not for me. I've seen some sleeved LS7 blocks do really well, though. A cammed LS7 would be. We don't even really have to change the heads on that. I would change the intake manifold. But a cammed LS7 is going to make more power than we made in any of the stock, starting NA motors that we did for any of the Big Bang tests. You told me that running a smaller cam to change the power curve is possible, but how much smaller were you thinking? I don't know what you want out of the combination. This is why camshafts are subjective. I don't know what the thing is that you like. What combination do you want of drivability and power? Like if you say this thing has to run 8s, then we'll focus on getting it to run 8s, and then you put up with whatever drivability you have. If you say this thing has to have a whisper smooth idle, and then we put up with whatever it runs after we make it have a whisper smooth idle, then you do that. My guess is there's some combination in between those two, but I don't know where you are on that scale. Only you know that. And so if you want more power, you shift toward a more performance-oriented camshaft. If you want more drivability, you shift in the other direction. We need another 4.3 liter build, max build power NA, humanly possible, and some more boost. Yes, on the boost, absolutely not on most NA power. I'm not doing anything like that. I'm not doing a stack injected, Brodex headed, I'm not doing any of that. That's just way too expensive. And I don't think it serves this market very well. Be much better to do ported stock heads, some kind of cam, maybe try a few different intake manifolds, maybe build an intake manifold from a small block, some sort of high rammy looking thing, and then run a blower on it like we've done before, nitrous on it, run turbos on it. That kind of stuff I think is much more useful and beneficial for the market than, hey, let's build an old, either a drag race aluminum headed 4.3 or one of the old Busch Grand National versions, something like that, with stack injection on or something. That it's neat, but it's just not very beneficial for most of the people. The Cyclone, that is good. The LT1, it's on small block Chevys. It was drilled for the distributor. Like HSR, more larger power curve, but LT1 seemed to rev higher. This was on a Corvette L98 with a mid-size cam. DC Dulcich did a video about rebuilding a 429 Cadillac. Is it a 429? And talked about learning how from David Vizard about how to build the Cadillac heads. He did a lot of stuff with David early on. Some have taken a bone stock turbo 400 for a run-of-the-mill pickup and done 1,000 horsepower. Did they not do anything to it? They didn't put a separator plate like a shift kit or anything like that in there? Or bands or clutches or a 300M shaft or anything? I don't know what the first part is on a turbo 400 that goes out. Like the first part and the second part. I don't know which of those parts is, parts is parts. Know which one of those is the more problematic. I would like to go down and see Dulcich, and Freiberg would be cool if he was there too. Lighter, more capable, and less electronic. Sounds like a Turbo 400 all day. Really, it comes to the Turbo 400 and 4L80 thing. I think comes down to what are you going to do with it? If you're going to drive it and go drive it on the freeway, you should do an overdrive trans. Nobody should be driving around with a 1-to-1 final gear, whether that's a 4-speed or whatever, or a Turbo 400 or Turbo 350, and like 4 series gears and something. It just makes life miserable. They like cruising at 2,000 RPM much better, even 2,500 or something. Richard, I got a wild hair the other day thinking a Ford 428 crank to a 427 could make a 448. Yeah, they made 454 strokers from those. I'd done some, wondering if people had done it. Yeah, that's fairly common for guys doing stroke versions of side oilers, particularly for Kit Cobra stuff back in the day. He got his dyno together. Finally, you guys should do a collaboration, a Big Bang video. I don't want to break his dyno, but I did talk to Tom, who used to work at West Tech, and we might do something down there. What about the Turbo 400, 410 gears at a Gear Vendors? Also good. A Gear Vendors is also good, but anything that gets you the overdrive gearing so that you can lower engine speed while you're cruising is good. If track racing only, trailer, pickup, tow rig, a Turbo 400 makes good logic. If it's just driving around the street and taking it to the drag strip, I wouldn't mind having a Turbo 400 in it. Danny, what's going on? Might as well do a power glide, even with the lightest, strongest one possible. I don't know it well, and I don't do enough really high powered drag racing stuff. I was going to say I don't know a situation where I would choose that transmission. I would rather have more gears than less gears. Works good though if you have a really broad power band. I was looking today and I didn't find it. Somebody mentioned last night, they were asking about how low I've activated nitrous. And I know that there's at least one run where as soon as we loaded it, we hit the nitrous on it. I just can't remember what motor it is. I'm going to have to send a message to Ernie because I think that Ernie was the guy that did it. See if he remembers. Edward, I know from your channel that Boost just raises the NA curve. Here's my question. With a big cam and a 408, can I do a small turbo to help the middle of the curve? The turbo, if it will support everything, will help the whole way through. But you don't need a small turbo to help the middle of the curve. On a 550 horse 408, you can put in 1,000 horsepower turbo, and you're going to have a lot of mid-range power. You're going to have all that you can handle. And you're going to have lots of top-end power, too. You're going to have 1,000 horsepower. Dual's 800 horsepower at the tire. Yeah. Yeah, just put 1,000 horsepower turbo on there. You're good to go. Rover's in the house. Did you get anything good from the Advanced Auto close-up? I didn't. I heard 6L80s crack easily from locals around me, old school drag racers. I've made 700 horsepower boosted on a 6L80 in stock form with no issues. What WFO? What vehicle was that in? A 6L80's got to be a truck or a SUV or something, right? I'm not doing 5,000 RPM launches. That probably helps, right? It's always the abuse part of it that really causes problems. 6L80s came in the 08 Silverados. Having more gears would be better. I was just, and it really didn't make any difference. But I was just tickled that my Nissan Versa had a 6-speed in it. I'm like, why would they do that? That seems like an unnecessary expense in a little car like that. But I love that car. I had 2 engines in the back of that from the wrecking yard. I went there and said, "Yep, where's your pickup?" I said, "No, this is it." Well, you can't get. Are you going to pick one up and then leave? I said, "No, both of those are going in there. This is happening right now. Just start making it happen. Pick that big block up right there and put it in there. It's all fine." It was down on the bump stops, and it was nose up, and it didn't really want to steer very well, but we made it. What's more important for turbo? Manifold header, heat retention, or optimized flow? None of those are the most important. They're all important. I don't think heat retention is the most important. And the tubular header versus log would be power output dependent. I like the tuning capabilities of a 6L 6 liters with the HP tuners. You can control almost anything from how the transmission acts. My brother had a 4.8, a 6L80. He was cruising 65, like 1700. I was boggled. Powerglide is good, costs a lot of money, and 2,000 horsepower capable max build. Turbo 400 is much stronger. The Turbo 400 is stronger than a Powerglide. I'm putting a low buck truck 6-liter in my C10 that currently has a 305 700 R4. That's going to make a big difference. Should I use a 700 R4 or 4L80 that I grabbed from the junkyard? I would put a 4L80 behind that. I don't know how long the 700 is going to last behind even just a cam 6-liter. I have a 6L80 in my 07 Denali. Torque converter's already slipping. Is running a full exhaust system feasible on a turbo stroker? Would like to maintain some type of control over the exhaust compared to fender or hood exit. Yes, you can. I don't know what power level or like how, what are you trying? Are you trying to do 1,500 or 2,000 horsepower? Are you trying to do 1,000 horsepower? What are you trying to do? You can certainly run a full exhaust in it. And obviously the bigger the better, but even if you snaked a dual 3-inch out there or something. I know a 95 Subaru Impreza wagon will fit a Honda J35 perfectly behind the upright back seats out of the junkyard. I remember in my Sprint bringing my Honda B-Series engine to West Tech. I took out the seat, the passenger seat, and then put the engine in, and then used the seat belt, strapped it down, held it in place, drove it from Vegas out to West Tech, and we did testing on the Honda stuff. It's pretty cool. So I could ride. People are looking in their car like, "What the heck is that? Why does that guy have a cool twin cam motor in his passenger seat?" Asked about spraying down low. The lowest I've sprayed is 2,675 RPM without a backfire, but I had more timing pulled out than I needed. 12 degrees of retard for a 200 shot. Seen more 6L80 swaps into older cars. They fit surprisingly well on a 3rd gen. Always once when I hear about power involved with a 700 R4. Yeah, that's like a 700 R4 is like a 4L60. I don't know if a Turbo 400 or a Powerglide is stronger. All I know is a 4L Slippy. It's weaker, yeah. Richard, his friend Kyle with a 68 GTO 455 Kaufman high ports, stock Turbo 400 and converter, 455 gears, ran 1140s. Nice. Probably should clean the fluid passages in the transmission. I've seen people take them apart when they start slipping and find buildup. And you don't want to get red rag debris in them either. I was told that by a transmission expert. I saw a video of a 700 R4 exploding on the dyno. Needle Raptor, what's going on? Funny enough, it took a Honda D16 back home a few hours in the back of my legacy wagon. There you go. Just pause Ford versus Ferrari. Family night to catch up my live stream. Their son Christopher, hello. And tell him every time Leo BB comes on to make sure that you boo. It's just making 500 horsepower on the 6.2, holds up 86% throttle. Never heard of the ACCEL intake, so going to have to do some homework. It's old school. It's 80s. You were at the racetrack when that happened, BNR? I exploded a built 700 R4 behind a 355 in a few months. Going to tear down our 88 302, hoping to find some forged pistons. Need to gap the rings for some boost. What would you suggest? I'm thinking taking out to 34. That's fine. 6.5 thousandths per inch of bore is fine. That's a 4-inch bore, so you're fine. That's more than enough. $34 seems excessive unless you're going to run a bunch. I drove the 200 car in 2019 to, is that Arkansas or Alaska, and launched it off the cliff for the 4th of July. That's cool. I watched that. I watched those videos. I was hoping you'd say 480E. Thanks for the input. Richard, what's up? Slick broke my ankle day after Christmas. Uh-oh. Had to have surgery? Do you got pins and stuff in it? Are you like a Terminator? Do we got to worry about you? Remember, we're the good guys. As long as you don't dump 9,000 into a monster 4L60 or 704, pick your favorite automatic. I stopped buying the red rags because of the lint they shed on everything. Yeah, that's what he was saying on the transmission stuff. Looking to get 800 reliable to the wheels. Swap is going into a 93 2500 Sierra. Thinking just swapping in a 5-speed manual. I think that would be cool. How much power is the 10R80 holding up? Does anybody know? Because we've gone the 4, we've gone the 6. Now you got to do the 10, right? Spraying too much runs the risk of flooding the intake, and then the carbon TB loses vacuum signal, then stuff flows the wrong direction until hot intake valve opens with the overlap, and then boom. Yeah, you don't want to do that. I've had a nitrous backfire in my Mustang, but it's fuel injected. ACCEL Super Ram, 480 horsepower, 460 foot-pounds, my 3rd gen. That would be a fun one. Converted to 5-speed manual, 373s. It was a torque monster. Was that a 350 or a 383? Biggest concern, I'm pulling the Richard Special, Junkyard 302, GT40, Summit, turning the boost. Would like to make 500 at the flywheel. Yeah, I think 12 pounds boost is going to do that. Like them both, the Turbo 400 and the 4L80. Yeah, David, that's a lot of power even now. So that's why I'm asking. I want to make sure the rings don't touch and the pistons don't melt. Well, 34 is way more than you need. That's as much or more than we ran on the Big Bang stuff. So they're not going to touch it at even probably 28. This is a topic I've struggled with by nature. I want a tunnel ram shaking through the hood, but my goal is to build an LS6 1,000 horsepower twin turbo so it doesn't scare my wife while driving it. That is the nice thing about turbos is the drivability. It just drives like a normal one, and that's the other reason that I recommend small camshafts. Is so you just go drive it around. I'm thinking, look, Grand National, just go drive it around. It's fine. When you need it, it's there. And there is also adjustable. It could be 7 pounds there, be 17, Could be 27, whatever you set it up at. Plan to show the car at the World of Wheels, so the stock truck intake has to go. What intake type would you recommend for 1,000 horsepower, making it streetable and still look great? You just got to pick the one that you like the look of, because anything else that you pick besides stock is going to trade power somewhere. Richard, how long do you think it'll take for me to redo the top end on the Dodge? Got plate with 6 screws in it and 4 large screws. Which Dodge are you doing? I'd like to know the limit of the NV 3500 5-speeds. I'd like to get a T56. I need to get a transmission for the LS. Decided on my MSD distributor curve for the Cleveland. Oh, got the plate, 6 screws, and put in 2 large screws. Okay, that's for the. I thought you were talking about the top end of the Dodge, but you're talking about the brake. That's a lot of stuff. Seeing 700 horsepower Cummins holding pretty well. Tore apart my treadmill motor for scrap today. It was an awful time, but it seems like an electric motor could make a good free jack set. If any of you are willing to build bikes out of junk, mini biking stuff, make a good free jack shaft. There we go. I'd like to have a mini bike, I think. Haven't heard of a mini bike in a long time. Had a doodlebug frame named Viper, that 97cc. Nice. I don't have a mini bike. I just like making them from junk. Would you consider Summit's F303 Plus to be too small for a 302 or a bit overkill? Given we know we should always go down a size or two from what we really want. I don't remember what are the specs on the F cam. We were looking at one of those today, but I don't think it was an F cam. We were looking at the 224, 232 kind of thing, but I don't remember which one that was. What's your opinion on the Hooker Blackheart turbo headers? If they're the headers and not the whole setup that exits out on one side, well, either one, they work good. And if they're the regular headers that just look like the ones, I don't know which ones you're talking about, I guess, because there's so many of them. There's one whole kit where the header goes, the exhaust goes from one side over to the other side, and then there's a single turbo setup on that side. Then there's the exhaust manifolds that are, I guess, designed to replace the factory exhaust manifolds, and then you can run turbos off of those. And then now they have the ones that mount the turbos up here. I'd be concerned about coils and stuff with those. So I don't know how street friendly those are with the way that they mount. I'm thinking that that's only kind of a sand rail kind of deal. At this point, get a TR6060 instead of a T56. Guess I've been lucky with my van. I stalled at 2200 on the last yellow light. I full throttle it. The nitrous comes on, and I flash the converter to 3200. I have twisted the drive shaft yoke 45 degrees. I put an NV 3500, my 01 Silverado extended cab. It's pretty fun. 5.3, 373 gears. Does it spin the tires? Have you ever taken off any sweet jumps? Cam's like a 228 at 50. David, the Summit versions are not single pattern. T56 Magnum, we run it up to 1300 horsepower. T56 Magnum. Summit F303 plus 226, 234. Okay, 114 plus 4. 8596 roller block. Also running 172s. Mind you, it'll be attached to a top mount twin turbo from CX Racing. The Envy 3500 is probably an affordable deal, right? From the wrecking yard. Any more street-friendly turbo headers? The hooker stuff, like I talked about, that single turbo one is good. We use stock truck manifolds, but you have to be able to get past stuff. Looking at putting a 6.2 in my new NBS truck. Could anyone recommend resources figuring out the swap? HOLLEY has a bunch of swap stuff. Scrolling. Man, I missed a bunch of stuff. Here we go. T56 Magnum is a TR6060 internals and a T56 case. Richard, my Charger Pursuit with 5.7 got 6.1 heads done, 6.1 intake, exhaust, 276mm turbos, 3-inch exhaust, 306 LSD. The limited slip differential, is that what it is? Well, the two turbos is what's going to make everything go. It's a single turbo with a wraparound on this. Yeah, I have videos up on it. We tested it. It's good. It fits in a lot of chassis, which is what I like about it. Do y'all like to lock out your distributors so there's no timing curve or play with springs and weights? I can never figure it out. I just lock it out, advance till it pings, and take 3 back out. That a lockout on a drag race car, especially with a good stall converter in it, works very well, because you're on most distributors, on most performance curves for a distributor, you're all in by like 3,000 or something. And so if you got a 3,000 or 3,500 stall, you have all the distributor. I mean, all the curve is in already, so you don't have to put a curve in it. If you're driving around, curve is definitely a good idea. Richard, I have a Lotus Esprit, nice, with a rod knock. I want to put a Ford Mazda Duratec 2.5 liter V6 in it. Any experience with this engine? The engine's good. The guys at the show shop used to use those. The ones that were in the SVT Contours, they used to do 3-liter versions of those with ported versions of the SVT Contour heads and extrude hone intake manifolds, and then they had cams made for those. So they used to do 3-liter versions of those motors and put them in the SVT Contours. So that would make good power in a Lotus Esprit. Or we could put a K series or something in there. David, out here in Texas, it's a diamond. People finally figured out 351 Windsors make power. They just now figured that out. Let's see. T56 Magnum is what I want. Does anybody have one of those that they want to trade for something? I've seen that guy pretty cool. Just put some grease in it. It'll be fine. That's right. 60 should bolt directly in place of the 4.8 and 5.3. Yeah, those are the same. Super Ram for 4-speed manual or auto. Stealth Ram for 6-speed. Chevy question: does Hooker's iron manifolds tend to crack? No, I don't think you're gonna crack the manifold or manifolds. It's a beast on the street. Brother was running a 302 with the Richmond 5-speed before going all silly in an 85 T-Bird, a 351 LSC, and custom 5-speed. Shifter is different on the TR6060 versus a T56. Got my NV 3500 for $500 down. South Florida, drove 3 hours to get it, but they're pretty rare in Florida. We just got our 66 Mustang back from the shop on CCP's front end kit. We can put whatever we want under the hood. That's nice. Did you guys get rid of the shock towers then? I like the TR6060 shifter more than my built T56. Let's see. People forget what small block Chevy and small block Fords are capable of. Yeah, every engine can make power. I ran a 306 twin turbo with a cam that needs lots of overlap, 109 LSA, tended to make boost in the top of second with 410s. It seems like a 408 stroker is a good setup, whether it's a Chevy or Ford or Mopar. It's because of it being a 4-inch stroke and more basic. I don't know what you mean by a good setup. It's 400 inches, so it's going to make good power. All the 400-inch motors make good power, particularly if you could give them lots of cylinder head and camshaft and turbos. Obviously, makes everything good. Richard, why have you never talked about your time hosting the show Binks? I wish that was me. I'm not nearly as cool as Rich Christensen, although I do know how to ride a motorcycle better than him. Redoing this 302 build to tried and true where I went wrong. Swap to 327s, T5 world class. Where's Public Chevy Super Rams going for these days, or what are they going for? I don't know what the pricing is. I don't think they're cheap, though. And also take a look at small block Ford GT40 intake manifolds. Is it better getting my car running NA before doing the turbo kit? Yes. Get it together and get it running. And then drive it around, and then you can start working on your turbo kit. Jay, thank you very much. Richard, the shock towers are gone ski. They forgot to pay rent. You're out. CBH, thank you. You're late. You're late. When you're late, you get the ads. Have you got to work with the core ECU by HB Tuners? I have not. Watching the old Omni build videos, popped in to say hi. Thanks for the videos. Happy to. We're going to be doing some more stuff with that. We're going to be doing a bunch of chassis dyno testing. Richard, to keep the manifolds manageable, do you know if they make T4 adapters to their manifold, or am I going to have to fab them up? You're talking about the HOLLEY ones? I think the difference between small block Chevy and big block Chevy is the number of clutches used and the direct and forward clutches. Oh, the difference on the 480 stuff. We got beer money. That's right. Dude, I'm going to tell Lisa we got shoe money tonight. Can't find a video on it. Have you ran the HOLLEY cross ram LS intake with square port? I've only seen you run the cathedral port. No, when I did the cathedral port one, they didn't have a square port one. They didn't offer it. I have run the Edelbrock square port one, but I imagine that the square port version is going to be comparable to the rec port version, or vice versa. The HOLLEY intake has a better street power curve. I don't spend most of my time 4 to 7. Brandon, what are you talking about? Are you talking about the pole? Because the Super Ram has more low speed power than the HOLLEY does, if that's what you're talking about. Scrolling. What's a good turbo for a 4.8? I hope to have really good turbos for 4.8s coming up. Something that you guys will really like. Jimmy and I are really excited about testing some of them. But for right now, it depends on, tell me what kind of power you want to make. See, Michael's already on it. Depends on what power you're trying to make. I live in Northeast Ohio. Very excited to see the Dodge garage. It's just down south. Need a beefier transaxle for my T1. Yeah, I was just talking to Ben yesterday. Zoo Truck, let's keep this going. Richard, thanks for answering all my silly questions. There are no silly questions. There's only the silly dude that's answering them. Would you extend just getting it running to not doing cams or fixing oil leaks, etc.? I feel like anything minor could delay me getting my car together. I think I would get it ready NA and make it ready so that you can add the turbo stuff. So I would do springs, and if you're going to do a cam in it, I'd put the cam in it. Because quite honestly, if the motor's out of the car, Swapping a cam into that, it's not, that's like an hour or two. It's not days. Using stock exhaust, 6.1 manifold versus shorties because they're basically shorties to the T4. The 6.1, the SRT8 manifolds are really good. We did turbo stuff with those. What's your preferred beer? I don't drink beer, but you can ask what my preferred scotch is, or vodka, or any sort of mixed drink. Super chats. It would be neat to have a clear intake manifold and some kind of air dye to see the airflow and fuel atomization. It would be cool. You'd have to have a high-speed camera to see it better, but it would be cool. You want to make 1,000 or 900? It's going to be a 7875 Gen 2 or Gen 3 from VS Racing, or an S4 S475, but you need a T4 version of that. That's why I tend to lean toward the stuff from Byron. He's got good stuff over there, because the 4.8 is going to need a T4. Suppose we could always run a dual plane with twin turbo setup. Watch the boost response roll in. Yeah, a dual plane makes more low speed power. It'll have better boost response, certainly, than a single plane. It's the only dollar you got. Dude, I appreciate it. I know what $1 is. I have many times driven my GoPed so that I don't have to pay truck gas. Driven my GoPed over to 7-Eleven to get something to drink. A lot of times, way back, an energy drink or something, with a handful of quarters, because I want to get rid of the quarters. You got to do it, man. That $1's top notch. I have, oh, that's a nickel. Aaron, what's going on? Glass bottle, cane sugar, sun drop, Jim Beam honey is smooth. Okay, cool. I have had Jack honey before. Crown and Coke on occasion. Mostly vodka stuff. So lemon drops. We have Lisa has cosmopolitans that she likes, and it's kind of like a martini, but it tastes better than a martini. I want to like a martini. I want to be that cool. I want to be James Bond cool, but I'm just not. Any good way of reaching the Dodge guys to get a hands-on 80s Dodge parts? PJ, send me an email, and I'll see if I can get you in contact with Ben. He might be here. A lot of times he's watching the live feed. I'll put my email address down. All right. Yep. Always have to move the cursor out of the way. So put my email address down there. And also, everybody, hey, we're starting 2025. I told you, none of you guys have spent any project car money. So richardholderperformance.com. We got stuff on sale right now. We're just carrying it through, man. We're just carrying it through. Richard, do you have a T4 to that manifold adapter? To which manifold? I don't know what you're talking about. I thought you were doing a T3 to T4. Alan. Let me scroll back up, Alan. Okay, here we go. What about head combos? Well, if I had a 4.8, I'd take one of my low buck truck cams. They're on sale, Cam and Springs. I put one of those cams in that 4.8. I would leave the heads that you have on your 4.8, either an 862 or a 706. I just leave those on there. Just do the spring upgrade, put the cam in it, put big injectors. We've got injectors and pumps on sale right now. Put that in there, put the right turbo on it. That's all you need. You don't have to change the heads. You don't have to do any of that. The turbo is going to dictate how much power you make. Would you advise on getting a turbo that exceeds your power goals? I can get a cheap Pulsar G42 on the marketplace. Yeah, as long as there's a limit to what I would recommend. And the reason for that is the farther that you go over your desired power level, within reason, The farther that you go past that, you are shifting response rate. So the more power you can make, the less response you'll have. Same thing with camshafts. The more power you make on top, the less that you make on the bottom. And so those work the same way. I'm here. What are we talking about? Talking about super rams and stealth rams, and now we're just talking about everything now, from Bigfoots and, you know, all of that. Loch Ness, drones, cyber trucks, all of it. That's the biggest donation they'll get. It's not the amount. That's right. It's the sentiment. Back to my V6, would it be easier to make the factory EFI work on this swap or use one of the aftermarket controllers? I don't know about that particular motor. I don't know how the wiring harness is on all that. And I don't know about factory ECU swaps on that, because I don't ever do that stuff. Sugarland's apple pie moonshine is really good. I've heard that. And I have some of the good stuff. Australian 10 pieces work as quarters. 10-cent pieces work most of the time. You remember going through the slugs and see which ones will work. I remember figuring out way back. Did anybody ever have the little Star Trek guns that shoot the little plastic discs? Did you guys ever see those? You put them in, it's got a little arm in there, and when you pull the trigger back, and it's like a spring-loaded deal, and it just launches the little disc out, a little slot. You know, it's got a little. They had rifle versions, and they had the little pistol version that had like a little clip on the front of it. The clip didn't do anything, but you'd load all these in, and they would go down in the clip, and so you could shoot those. But we figured out that those worked as pennies in gumball machines. You can tell how I grew up. But we didn't realize that those cost more than a penny a piece. Like, look, you could totally put these in here and work as pennies. I don't know why we could find pennies laying on the ground. And like I said, those cost more than pennies. That's just why we weren't good financial advisors back then. I got a free $1 from Google Play. Nice. We got T3 GT35 turbos for our 302, roughly 62 millimeters. And you have 2 of those, right? Near. It also depends on the throttle body used. More air on a milder intake can make more fuel efficient. You're talking about the pole. Okay. I don't know how the throttle body is going to affect fuel efficiency, but do you do Bloody Marys? I don't. I'm not a big fan of tomato juice, so I'm waiting to pay on my PayPal to buy more car parts. There you go. Low key, still waiting on Richard to send out the wine intake manifold. Which one? Which wine intake manifold? 6.1 exhaust manifolds to T4 adapters. Oh, I never did that. We just you just weld it together. You just weld I don't remember if those were, I can't remember now. I have to look and see. I can't remember if those were a ball and socket kind of thing. And then we just did a tubing, and then you cut, and then you weld the flange on. It's not hard. That's like 15 minutes of welding or whatever. It's better to be broke with all the car parts you could dream of than rich and have no car parts. That's right. I don't think the rich part would happen, because it just would be more car parts or a really cool car. Hit the like button. What would you cam from your 540 tunnel ramp tests ever be available? The cam? No, that motor's gone. It's been gone for a long time. Richard's website, Mad Dog and those Ellis boys. Need to go make some Ford love. I was talking about Ford love today, particularly a camshaft. Just going to say turbos are like cams. A big one. Yep. Some apple pie moonshine. I know a guy that did 600 wheel horsepower on a 4.8 RX-7. He used a whole set semi-truck T6 turbo. Sounds like an airplane. The T6 would be big. It'd be bigger than I would want on a 4.8. But let's show up and see what happens. Ford guys have more funds than the budget LS guys. Well, I'll tell you why I was talking about that, because I was looking at the Extreme Energy 274 cam that I've been telling people about for years, for decades, actually. It's been that long. I saw one for sale and new, and they're like $529. I'm like, that's ridiculous for a camshaft. And so I thought, well, I'm going to make one that's going to be less than that. And I looked, oh, well, Summit cams are $279. At least that's more realistic for a camshaft. I had a Ninja Turtle van that shot discs. The ones that, and the ones that also shot the little yellow balls. Yeah, the ones that shot the little yellow balls would shoot it out of the one down below the real barrel, but you could shoot those too. And then did you have the ones that have the cap guns too, that were like a regular cap gun that would have the rolls of caps, but also the ones that you'd actually load with the little primer caps that you'd put in there, little yellow discs that you put in there, and then you shoot those and they would make the bang noise and stuff. I like the real caps because you soon found out that if you hit them, that they would explode, just like, because that's what you're doing, you're setting it off. And then you found out that if you hit it with something really big, that it would go even louder. And then so you started stacking like first rolls of them, because if you hit that hard enough, you could make most of them go off, and then a whole box of them and big rocks and stuff. You know, it's part of being a dude. I had a Ninja Turtle van that shot the discs, except they were pizzas. Cowabunga. There's an NHRA NMCA C4 Corvette racer I knew on Digital Corvette Forum. Doug used an ACCEL Super Ram. Very cool. I've already been here too late. We got to close out our poll. 59% saying no, you would not choose the Super Ram. Jack Fire and Coke. Okay, there you go. You're mixing it half and half. That would be a lot. He was a YN Stealth from West Tech when they were downsizing, but couldn't get it done. Did you want that or something? They probably still have it. They might. I don't know if they do or not. Stuck with a Victor Jr. single plane. Some of those cams cost a lot of money. It's been an hour, I know. I'm losing focus, right? Chevy guy, but I learned to appreciate the Coyote engine. Disliking alcohol isn't a bad thing. Your cams come with stickers. We don't have stickers yet. We're working on that. What kind of cams would you want to build for Fords? Super duper turbo cam. Yeah, my cam would be a turbo cam. All right, drag band, you got on the front page. That's cool. Got the turbo for super cheap. That's good. Can you put 51 compression in 350? Yes. You have to have really, really good gas, though. And on that note, it is time to go. I've been here more than an hour. It's late. But I'll see you guys all. I promise I will see you all tomorrow. And also, I think I'm going to shave. Make sure to go check out all the videos I got up. Thank you for all the support in 2024. Go check out richardholderperformance.com for all your LS needs, and also injectors, because injectors are needed for not just LS stuff. You can use those for lots of stuff. I'll see you all tomorrow.